I shouldn't have been there. Not at this engagement party, not in this expensive silk shirt that clung uncomfortably tight to my frame, and definitely not standing just 3 feet away from him. Charlie Harlow, my cousin Caroline's fiancé. She had begged me to come, insisted it would mean everything to her, and like the fool I was, I believed her. The moment I stepped into that grand ballroom with its crystal chandeliers and marble floors, his eyes found mine. It wasn't a casual glance. It wasn't a polite acknowledgement. It was an intense, burning stare that made my pulse stutter and my omega instinct scream at me to run. I pressed my back against the cool marble column, trying to steady my breathing. He was an alpha, an engaged alpha, and I was nobody, just Caroline's shadow. The unwanted omega cousin everyone whispered about behind closed doors. My family barely acknowledged my existence unless they needed someone to ridicule. "Adam, you came?" he said, appearing beside me so suddenly that I flinched. His voice was deep and rough, like velvet draped over gravel. I kept my gaze fixed on the polished floor, refusing to meet his eyes. "Caroline invited me," I replied quietly. "I see." It wasn't a question, just a simple acknowledgement that somehow felt loaded with unspoken meaning. That's when his scent hit me. Cedar wood and smoke, mixed with something darker, something primal that made my knees weak. I dug my nails into my palms, fighting for control. This was wrong. Everything about this situation was wrong. I was at his engagement party and he was my cousin's future husband. "You should get back to Caroline," I whispered, hating how my voice trembled. "She'll be looking for you." Charlie leaned closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "What if I don't want to?" My breath caught in my throat. His hand brushed against my wrist, barely a touch, just a feather-light graze, but it sent electricity racing up my entire arm. I jerked back instinctively, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. "Please don't," I managed to say. "Don't what, Adam?" His eyes were molten gold, pinning me in place like a moth to flame. "Don't notice you? Don't acknowledge your scent? It's too late for that. I can't stop seeing you." He said my name with such intensity, like it was a secret confession, like it was something forbidden and precious all at once. And God help me, I wanted to hear it again. Across the room, Caroline's laugh rang out, clear, victorious, the sound of someone who had already won everything in life. She had it all, everything I'd never dreamed of having. A powerful alpha, a massive solitaire diamond ring that caught the light, the perfect life that belonged in glossy magazines. But Charlie wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me, only at me. For the first time in my life I felt seen. Not invisible, not like a shadow, real. And that realization terrified me more than anything because I knew this could only lead to destruction. I tried to move away, but the column was at my back and Charlie was in front of me, his presence overwhelming every sense I had. "This can't happen," I said, my voice barely audible. "You're engaged to her. You're supposed to marry Caroline." "Supposed to," he repeated, and there was something bitter in his tone. "That's an interesting choice of words. It's the truth. Your family's arranged this. You've been together for 2 years. I don't care what everyone expects." His hand came up to rest against the column beside my head, caging me in without actually touching me. "Do you know how long I've been trying to convince myself that what I feel around you is nothing? That it's just some passing attraction I can ignore?" "Then ignore it," I pleaded, even as my body betrayed me by leaning slightly toward him. "Forget about me. I'm nothing, Charlie. I have nothing to offer you." His jaw clenched. "You think you're nothing? I know I'm nothing. My own family barely tolerates me. I work a dead-end job just to afford a studio apartment in the worst part of town. Caroline has everything. Beauty, connections, wealth. She's everything an alpha like you should want." "Stop," he said sharply, and I fell silent. "Stop talking about yourself like that. You have no idea what you are." Before I could respond, Caroline's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Charlie, there you are. Come take photos with me and the senator." She hadn't seen us yet, hadn't noticed how close he was standing to me, but she would soon. Charlie stepped back, putting a respectable distance between us, but his eyes never left mine. "This conversation isn't over, Adam." "It has to be," I said, finally finding the courage to look directly at him. "It has to be over before it even starts." He opened his mouth to argue, but Caroline was approaching now, her heels clicking against the marble floor. I used the distraction to slip away, disappearing into the crowd of guests. My hands were shaking so badly I had to hide them in my pockets. I found refuge near the bar, ordering water because I didn't trust myself with alcohol right now. The bartender gave me a sympathetic look, probably sensing my distress. I was an omega at an alpha's engagement party, mere out of place among all these wealthy, powerful people. "You look like you've seen a ghost," a voice said beside me. I turned to find an elderly woman with kind eyes and an expensive pearl necklace. "First time at one of these society events?" "Something like that," I admitted. She patted my hand gently. "Word of advice, dear. When you find yourself in a situation that could destroy everything, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away." I stared at her, wondering if she somehow knew about the charged moment I just shared with Charlie. But she simply smiled and walked away, leaving me with her cryptic wisdom. I lasted another hour at the party, staying as far from Charlie as possible while Caroline paraded him around like a trophy. Every time I accidentally caught his gaze across the room, it felt like an electric shock. This was dangerous. He was dangerous, not because he would hurt me physically, but because he made me want things I had no right to want. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I found Caroline to say goodbye, making up some excuse about an early morning shift at work. She barely acknowledged me, already drunk on champagne and attention. As I headed toward the exit, I felt eyes on me. I didn't need to turn around to know who was watching me leave. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, and I took my first full breath in hours. I'd survived. I'd gotten through the party without causing a scene, without embarrassing myself or Caroline. But as I walked to the subway station, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just changed. That single conversation with Charlie had shifted something fundamental, and there was no going back to the way things were before. I just didn't know yet how right I was. 3 days passed in blessed silence. I threw myself into work, picked up extra shifts at the bookstore where I was employed, and tried to convince myself that the engagement party had been a temporary insanity. Charlie Harlow was engaged to my cousin. That was reality. Whatever had sparked between us was nothing more than a dangerous fantasy that needed to die. Then Caroline called and shattered my fragile peace. "Adam, you have to come to the pre-wedding dinner tomorrow night." Her voice was sugary sweet, which immediately put me on guard. Caroline was never nice to me unless she wanted something. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said carefully. "I'm sure you want it to be just close family and friends." "You are family, silly. Please. It would mean so much to me." There was an edge underneath her cheerful tone, something sharp and calculating. "Charlie specifically asked if you'd be there." My stomach dropped. "He did?" "Yes. He said he enjoyed talking to you at the engagement party and wants to get to know my family better." "Isn't that sweet?" She giggled, but it sounded forced. "So you'll come, right? 7 o'clock at Russo's. Don't be late." She hung up before I could refuse. I stared at my phone, dread pooling in my gut. This felt like a trap, but I couldn't figure out what kind. If I didn't show up, Caroline would make it into a huge drama about how I was disrespecting her. If I did show up, I'd have to sit through an entire dinner trying not to look at Charlie. The next evening, I arrived at Russo's exactly on time. It was one of those exclusive restaurants where you needed a reservation months in advance, and the menu didn't list prices, because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. I felt completely out of place in my thrift store blazer, among all the designer labels. Caroline waved me over to a private dining room where about 15 people were already gathered. Charlie sat at the head of the table, looking uncomfortable in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Our eyes met for just a second before I quickly looked away and took the only empty seat, which of course was directly across from him. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Caroline dominated the conversation, talking about wedding plans and honeymoon destinations. I focused on my food, trying to become invisible, but I could feel Charlie's gaze on me throughout the meal, heavy and constant. "So Adam," Caroline's mother, my aunt, suddenly addressed me, her voice dripping with false concern. "How is that little bookstore job of yours? Still shelving romance novels?" He crept up my neck. "It's fine, thank you. Such humble work," she continued, making it sound like an insult. "Caroline was just telling us how you never pursued higher education." "What a Not everyone needs a degree to have value," Charlie said quietly. and the table went silent. He was looking at my aunt with an expression I couldn't quite read. Some of the most intelligent people I know never set foot in a university. My aunt's smile froze. Caroline laughed nervously. Charlie's just being polite. We all know Adam has limited prospects. She reached over to squeeze his arm possessively. That's why I'm so lucky to have found you, darling. Someone with ambition and success. I wanted to disappear into the floor. The rest of dinner crawled by painfully until finally, mercifully, people started getting up to use the restroom or step outside for air. I seized the opportunity to escape to the restaurant's garden area, a small courtyard with fairy lights and a fountain. I was standing there, trying to calm my racing thoughts when I heard footsteps behind me. Adam. I closed my eyes briefly before turning around. Charlie stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking at me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. You shouldn't be out here, I said. Someone might see. I don't care. He took a step closer. Are you okay? What your aunt said was cruel. I'm used to it. I wrapped my arms around myself defensively. My family has never thought much of me. I'm the Omega who couldn't even finish college, remember? The disappointment. You're not a disappointment. His voice was fierce. Whatever he was about to say was cut off by Caroline's scream. We both spun around to find her standing in the garden entrance, her face contorted with rage and crocodile tears already streaming down her cheeks. Behind her, several dinner guests were gathering, drawn by her theatrical cry. I knew it, she shrieked, pointing at us accusingly. I knew you were trying to steal him from me. What? No, we were just... I started, but she talked right over me. Don't lie. I saw you. I saw him touching you, whispering God knows what in your ear. She turned to the growing audience, playing to them like an actress on stage. I invited him here as family, and this is how he repays me, by trying to seduce my fiancée. Caroline, that's not what happened, Charlie said, his voice low and dangerous, but she was on a roll now, tears flowing freely as she clutched her chest dramatically. I've known he was jealous since we were children. He's always wanted everything I had, my clothes, my friends, my opportunities. But I never thought he'd go this far. I never thought he'd try to destroy my wedding. The whispers started immediately. I saw the judgment forming on every face. The worthless Omega, the homewrecker, the desperate attention seeker. My vision blurred as panic set in. I needed to defend myself, to explain, but my voice wouldn't work. Caroline. Charlie's single word cut through the chaos like a blade. He stepped away from me, but his eyes were locked on his fiancée. Stop lying. Her tears paused midstream. Excuse me? I was out here with Adam for less than 2 minutes. We were having a conversation. A normal, polite conversation. His voice was ice cold. And you weren't anywhere near the garden until you need to make this scene. How dare you take his side over mine? Caroline's mask was cracking. Genuine rage bleeding through. I'm your fiancé. We're getting married in 3 months. Are we? Charlie asked quietly, and the garden went absolutely silent. Caroline's eyes widened. What is that supposed to mean? It means, he said slowly, each word deliberate, that I'm tired of pretending. Tired of playing this role in a relationship that was arranged by our families without any regard for what either of us AC wanted. You're not serious. Caroline looked around wildly at the watching guests. He's not serious. He's just upset. Charlie, we can talk about this privately. There's nothing to talk about. He turned to me then, and I saw something in his eyes that made my heart stop. Adam didn't seduce me. He didn't try to steal me. If anything, I've been drawn to him since the moment we met, and that's on me. Not him. I couldn't breathe. He just confessed in front of everyone. Caroline's face went from white to red. Fine, she spat venomously, rounding on me, but everyone here knows what you really are. Adam, a pathetic, worthless Omega who will never be good enough for anyone, especially not for him. Her words hit like physical blows, each one designed to wound. But I didn't flinch, because Charlie was still looking at me, and in his eyes I saw something I'd never seen directed at me before. Protection, anger on my behalf, and something deeper I was afraid to name. The dinner party dissolved into chaos. I walked out without looking back, but I knew nothing would ever be the same. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I walked for hours through the city streets, trying to process what had happened. Charlie had defended me. In front of everyone, he'd chosen to believe me over Caroline. And he'd admitted in public where anyone could hear that he was drawn to me. It was past midnight when I finally climbed the stairs to my tiny studio apartment, exhausted emotionally and physically. I was fumbling with my keys when I sensed someone nearby and looked up to find Charlie sitting on the floor outside my door. He stood up quickly when he saw me, and I noticed he was still wearing the same suit from dinner, though he'd lost the tie somewhere along the way. His hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "How long have you been waiting?" I asked, too tired to be surprised. "A few hours." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "I didn't know if you'd come home or stay with a friend." "I don't really have friends," I admitted, unlocking the door. "Not the kind you can show up at their place crying after midnight, anyway." I hesitated at the threshold. Inviting him inside felt dangerous, like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But leaving him in the hallway seemed cruel, especially after what he'd done for me tonight. "Come in," I said finally. But just for a minute. My apartment was exactly what you'd expect from someone working minimum wage. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and dining room, with a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in and a kitchenette that was more suggestion than reality. I was acutely aware of how different it must be from whatever luxury penthouse Charlie probably lived in. "Do you want water or something?" I asked awkwardly, setting my keys on the small table by the door. "I broke off the engagement," he said abruptly. I froze. "What?" "After you left. I told Caroline it was over. Told both our families that I couldn't marry someone who would publicly humiliate another person like that, someone who would lie so easily." He leaned against the wall, looking exhausted. "My father is furious, says I'm throwing away a major business merger over nothing." "Charlie, you didn't have to do that. Not for me." My voice came out as barely a whisper. "Yes, I did." He pushed off the wall, taking a step toward me. "Because she was lying and I couldn't let her get away with it. Because you didn't deserve what she did to you. And because I've been lying too, to myself, to everyone about what I feel." My heart was racing so fast I felt dizzy. "What do you feel?" "Drawn to you. Obsessed with you, if I'm being honest." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "I've tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was nothing, that it would fade. But it's only gotten stronger." "We barely know each other," I protested weakly. "We've had maybe 3 real conversations." "I know. It doesn't make sense. But when I'm near you, everything else just fades. Your scent, the way you try to make yourself small and invisible when you're anything but. The quiet strength you have, despite everyone around you trying to tear you down." He took another step closer. "Tell me you don't feel it too." I wanted to lie, wanted to protect both of us from this impossible situation. But I couldn't. "I feel it," I admitted. "But feeling something doesn't make it right. Your family will hate you. Caroline will make our lives miserable. And my voice broke. "I have nothing to give you in return. No money, no connections, no status. Just me, and I'm not enough." "Stop." He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame my face. "Stop saying you're not enough. You're the first person who's made me feel anything real in years." "Charlie, I know this is fast. I know it's complicated and messy and probably a terrible idea by any rational measure." His thumbs brushed my cheekbones gently. "But I'm asking you to give this a chance. Give us a chance." I should have said no. Should have been the reasonable one, the practical one. But standing there with his hands on my face, his scent surrounding me, I couldn't find the strength to refuse. "Okay," I whispered. Something shifted in his expression, relief, joy, desire, all mixed together. Okay, I repeated, more firmly this time. "But we take it slow. No rushing into anything. And if this becomes too much, if it's hurting you or your career, we stop. Deal?" "Deal." He agreed, though I could see in his eyes he had no intention of stopping for anything. He leaned down slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. When I didn't, his lips met mine in a kiss that started gentle and quickly deepened into something desperate and needy. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as he backed me against the wall. Every nerve in my body came alive, responding to him in ways I'd never experienced before. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I noticed his eyes had changed. The gold was brighter, more intense. Alpha instincts rising to the surface. "I should go," he said, though he made no move to leave. Before I do something we're not ready for, I nodded, not trusting my voice. He pressed one more soft kiss to my forehead before forcing himself to step back. Can I see you tomorrow? He asked. I work until 6. I'll pick you up after. We can get dinner somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can actually talk without an audience. He headed for the door, then paused. Adam, thank you for giving me a aunt. After he left, I stood there for a long time, touching my lips where he'd kissed me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Multiple photos of Charlie and me in the garden, clearly taken by someone at the dinner. The message read, "This is just the beginning. You'll regret ever touching what's mine." I deleted it without responding. But I knew Caroline's threats weren't empty. She would come after us with everything she had. But for the first time in my life, I had someone who believed I was worth fighting for. Someone who saw me as more than just a worthless omega. Whatever happened next, at least I wouldn't face it alone. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of my apartment, pulling me from sleep. For a blissful moment, I forgot everything. The dinner party disaster, Caroline's threats, the reporters outside. Then awareness crashed over me in waves. The warmth of another body pressed against mine. The unfamiliar weight of an arm draped possessively across my waist. The faint ache in muscles I didn't know I had. Charlie. Last night came rushing back in fragments, desperate kisses, whispered words against heated skin. The way he'd looked at me like I was something precious. My face burned at the memory. We'd crossed a line there was no uncrossing. I tried to slip out from under his arm without waking him, needing space to think, to process. But the moment I shifted, his grip tightened instinctively, pulling me back against his chest. Where are you going? His voice was rough with sleep. Eyes still closed. Just the bathroom. I started to say, but the words came out wrong. My voice sounded different, softer, raspier, like something fundamental had shifted. And there was this strange warmth spreading through my chest, foreign and slightly alarming. Charlie's eyes snapped open immediately. He stared at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Then his gaze dropped to my neck. I watched his expression shift from sleepy confusion to wide-eyed shock. Adam. He sat up abruptly, one hand reaching toward my throat but stopping just short of touching. Tell me I'm seeing things. What? Panic spiked through me. I scrambled out of bed, nearly tripping over the sheets in my haste to reach the bathroom mirror. There, just below my jaw on the left side, was a mark. Not a hickey, I knew what those looked like. This was different. A faint silvery pattern that seemed to shimmer in the light, almost like a tattoo but alive somehow, pulsing gently with my heartbeat. A bonding mark. No, 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 no. The words tumbled out as I touched it with shaking fingers. The moment my skin made contact, warmth flooded my entire system, so intense I had to grip the sink to stay tight. This can't be happening. We didn't. Charlie appeared in the bathroom doorway, looking equally shell-shocked. I didn't bite you. I swear I was careful not to. He ran both hands through his hair, making it stick up at odd angles. Bonding marks don't just appear. There has to be an exchange of... He stopped, color draining from his face. Unless what? My voice came out high and thin. Sometimes, in rare cases, if the connection between an alpha and omega is strong enough, the bond can form spontaneously, without the traditional bite. He was staring at the mark on my neck like it held all the answers to the universe. I've only heard of it happening a handful of times, when the compatibility is perfect. I sank down onto the closed toilet lid, legs too shaky to hold me up. This is permanent. You know that, right? There's no reversing a bond once it's formed. It's biologically impossible. I know. He crouched down in front of me, hands hovering uncertainly like he wasn't sure if he should touch me. Adam, look at me. Please. I forced myself to meet his eyes. They were still that molten gold, but there was something else there now. A connection I could actually feel humming between us like a live wire. Your family is going to disown me, I said. The reality of the situation finally hitting. Caroline will destroy both of us. Your business partners will drop you. Everything you've built, their life, it's all going to fall apart because of this. Because of me. Stop. His hands finally made contact, cupping my face with a gentleness that made my throat tight. None of that matters. How can you say that? Of course it matters. You're throwing away everything for someone who has nothing to offer in return. Tears I'd been holding back started to fall. I'm a bookstore clerk. He lives in a studio apartment and can barely afford groceries some weeks. You're a successful businessman with a reputation and a future. This bond, my voice cracked. It should have been with someone worthy of you. His thumbs wiped away my tears. His expression fierce. You are worthy. More than worthy. And I need you to understand something. I don't care about the business connections or the social standing or any of it. Those things never made me happy. You're just saying that because the bond is new. Once the initial intensity fades, I felt this way before the bond formed. He interrupted. From the first moment I saw you at that engagement party, trying to disappear into the background while being the most captivating person in the room. The bond didn't create what I feel. It just made it impossible to deny. My phone, still on the nightstand in the other room, started buzzing insistently. We both knew who it was before I even checked. Caroline had probably already heard somehow, or maybe she was just continuing her campaign harassment. I retrieved the phone with reluctance, unsurprised to see multiple messages from her. You think you've won, but this is just beginning. Everyone will know what you really are. A desperate omega who trapped an alpha with a bond. You'll lose everything. The messages kept coming, each one more vicious than the last. Charlie read them over my shoulder, his jaw tightening with each new threat. Let me handle this, he said quietly. Let me protect you from her. Every instinct I had screamed at me to refuse, to keep fighting my own battles like I always had. But the bone-deep exhaustion of years spent defending myself alone made me hesitate. I've been dealing with Caroline my entire life. She's been tearing me down since we were children, always finding new ways to remind me I wasn't good enough, wasn't wanted. I learned to handle it on my own because no one else ever stepped in. I'm stepping in now. He turned me to face him fully. You don't have to fight alone anymore. That's what this bond means. We face things together, even when those things include your ex-fiancé trying to ruin both our lives. Especially then. A small grim smile crossed his face. Besides, Caroline made a critical error. She underestimated both of us. She thinks you'll crumble under pressure and I'll cave to family expectations. She's wrong on both counts. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this wouldn't all come crashing down around us. But years of disappointment had taught me to be realistic. What if this bond was a mistake? What if we wake up in a month and regret everything? We won't. His certainty was absolute. I've spent my entire adult life doing what was expected of me, being who my family wanted me to be. This bond, what I feel for you, it's the first real choice I've made. And I don't regret it. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. Someone had leaked information about our bond to the press. The headline read, Harlow Industries heir in scandal, secret bond with cousins Omega. It's starting, I whispered, showing him the screen. Charlie took the phone from my hands and deliberately powered it off. Then let it start. We'll face it together. He pulled me into his arms, and despite everything, the uncertainty, the fear, the knowledge that our lives were about to become infinitely more complicated, I felt safe. The bond hummed between us, warm and steady and real. Whatever happened next, at least I wouldn't be alone. The video appeared online 3 days after our bond formed. I was attempting to maintain some semblance of normalcy, sitting at my desk in the bookstore's back office, when my personal email exploded with notifications. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months, distant acquaintances, even people I didn't recognize, all sending me the same link with subject lines ranging from concern to outright condemnation. I clicked it with trembling hands. The footage was grainy, clearly shot from a concealed camera, but the audio was crystal clear. There we were in the restaurant garden, Charlie and me during those brief moments before Caroline had staged her dramatic scene. But this wasn't how I remembered it. The video had been edited, spliced together with such professional precision that it told an entirely different story. In this version, I was the aggressor. The editing made it look like I'd initiated the contact, like I'd deliberately sought him out and thrown myself at him. They'd somehow isolated audio of me saying I feel it, and placed it out of context, making it sound like a confession of guilt rather than the vulnerable admission it had actually been. The caption made my stomach turn. Exposed homewrecker Omega seduces engaged alpha. Full truth revealed. Within hours it had gone viral. Shares, comments, think pieces about Omega morality and the breakdown of traditional values. My face was everywhere, frozen in expressions taken out of context, twisted to fit Caroline's narrative. Mr. Harrison, my boss, called me into his office within the hour. He was a kind man, had given me this job when no one else would hire an Omega without a degree. But his expression was pained as I sat down across from his desk. Adam, I'm sorry, but I'm going to need you to take a leave of absence. Indefinitely. The words hit like a physical blow even though I'd been expecting them. The video is fake. It's been manipulated to make me look. I believe you, he said gently, and I could tell he meant it. But the bookstore chain has a corporate image to maintain. With this level of negative attention, headquarters is concerned about having me associated with the brand. I stood up, pride keeping my spine straight even as my world collapsed. I understand. I'll clear out my locker. Adam, when this all blows over, there'll be a place for you here. I promise. We both knew he was lying, but I appreciated the kindness behind it anyway. By the time I made it home, there were reporters camped outside my apartment building. Not just one or two, a dozen at least. Cameras and microphones ready. They shouted questions as I pushed through, each one more invasive than the last. Adam, did you deliberately seduce Charlie Harlow? How long were you planning to break up the engagement? Do you have a statement about the bond? Is it true you've been obsessed with your cousin's life? I kept my head down, ignored them all, and nearly fell through my apartment door in my haste to escape. Inside, Charlie was waiting, and the relief that flooded through me was so intense it brought fresh tears to my eyes. How did you get in here without them seeing? I asked. Building manager let me use the service entrance. I might have mentioned something about pressing harassment charges if they didn't help. He was across the room in seconds, pulling me into his arms. I saw the video. I've already contacted my lawyers about getting it taken down for defamation. It won't matter. I pulled back to look at him, exhausted beyond measure. Even if we prove it's fake, the damage is done. Everyone has already decided I'm guilty. I just lost my job. My aunt left me a voicemail disowning me from the family. People I thought were friends have blocked me on every platform. His expression went dark, dangerous in a way I'd never seen before. Caroline is behind this. She had to have hired someone to edit the footage, to make it go viral. This level of coordination isn't random. Of course she's behind it. This is what she does. She destroys anything that threatens her perfect life. Bitterness leaked into my voice. And I was stupid enough to think I could actually have something without her ruining it. She hasn't ruined anything. Charlie's hands framed my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. You still have me. The bond is still real. Nothing she does can change that. For how long, though? The question I'd been terrified to ask finally burst out. How long before you realize I'm more trouble than I'm worth? Before the constant attacks and public scrutiny become too much? Before you wake up and regret ever meeting me? Never. The word was absolute, no room for doubt. Listen to me carefully, Adam. I don't regret you. I will never regret you, no matter what Caroline or anyone else does. You say that now. I say that always. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. She can leak 1,000 videos. The whole world can think whatever they want. But this bond between us? That's ours. That's real. And I'm not walking away from it. My phone lit up with another message from Caroline. Enjoying your 15 minutes of fame. He'll leave you the moment something better comes along. You're just a temporary distraction. I showed Charlie the screen, and his jaw clenched so hard I could hear his teeth grind. Let me handle her. Legally, publicly, whatever it takes to make her stop. His voice was steel. Please, let me fight this battle for you. For my entire life, I'd handled everything alone. Dealt with the bullying, the ostracism, the constant reminder that I wasn't wanted. I'd built walls so high that letting anyone in felt impossible. But standing there, seeing the fierce protectiveness in Charlie's eyes, feeling the bond between us pulse with certainty. Okay? I whispered. Okay. The next morning, Charlie's lawyer released a statement identifying the video as doctored footage, threatening legal action against anyone who continued to share it. His public relations team began a coordinated response, pushing back against the narrative Caroline had created. But it was what Charlie did personally that shocked me most. He posted on his own social media something he rarely did. A simple message. The video circulating about Adam and me has been maliciously edited to deceive the public. Adam is my bonded mate and I stand with him completely. Anyone with concerns can direct them to me personally. He'd attached our bonding certificate. Official, legal, impossible to dispute. The internet exploded again. But this time the narrative began to shift. People started questioning the original video, pointing out inconsistencies in the editing. Several media analysts came forward calling it a clear manipulation. Caroline's plan was backfiring. That evening, as we sat together in my tiny apartment watching the fallout unfold, Charlie pulled me close. "This isn't over. She'll try something else, I know. But for the first time, I wasn't facing it alone. But maybe we can actually survive this." "We will," he said with absolute certainty. Together, and despite everything, I believed him. The press conference was Charlie's idea, and I fought him on it for 2 solid days. "This will only make things worse," I argued for what felt like the 100th time. "More publicity, more scrutiny. Why can't we just wait for it to blow over?" "Because Caroline won't let it blow over." He was pacing his downtown office, tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, signs he'd been here all night strategizing. "She'll keep feeding the story, keep finding new ways to attack. We need to control the narrative before she does more damage. By putting ourselves in front of every major news outlet in the country? That's your solution? By telling the truth, publicly, unequivocally, with no room for misinterpretation." He stopped pacing to face me. "I'm tired of hiding, Adam. Tired of letting other people peen who we are and what this bond means." That's how I found myself, 1 week after the video leak, standing backstage at a hotel conference room while reporters filed in. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Charlie noticed and laced our fingers together, the bond us, offering comfort even through my panic. "We don't have to do this," he said quietly. "If you're not ready, we can wait." But I was tired too. Tired of being painted as a villain. Tired of watching him take hit after hit defending me. "No. Let's end this." The conference room was packed. Every major outlet had sent someone. News networks, entertainment shows, even some international press. The lights were blinding. The camera shutters a constant clicking backdrop. My Omega instinct screamed at me to submit, to make myself small and invisible. But Charlie's presence beside me kept me grounded. He stepped up to the podium first and the room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming. I know there's been considerable speculation about my relationship with Adam, and I want to address it directly." His voice was steady, commanding. "The video that circulated last week was deliberately manipulated. My legal team has confirmed it was professionally edited to misrepresent a private conversation and paint Adam in a false light." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Charlie waited for them to quiet before continuing. "The truth is this. I developed feelings for Adam before ending my engagement to Caroline Crawford. That's on me, not him. He did nothing to encourage those feelings. In fact, he tried repeatedly to maintain appropriate boundaries." My heart was in my throat as he spoke, laying everything bare. "I take full responsibility for the timeline and the hurt it may have caused. But I will not apologize for the bond we share or for choosing to be with someone who makes me genuinely happy for the first time in my mad life." The questions started immediately, reporters shouting over each other. Charlie held up a hand. "Adam has agreed to make a statement. I ask that you show him the same respect you'd show anyone else in this situation." He stepped back and suddenly all eyes were on me. The weight of their collective judgment was suffocating. I gripped the podium to keep from fleeing. "I didn't ask for any of this," I began, voice quieter than Charlie's but steady. "I didn't ask to develop feelings for someone who was unavailable. I didn't plan for a bond to form. But here we are." I took a breath, meeting the cameras directly. "Caroline has painted me as a calculating homewrecker. That's not who I am. I'm just someone who fell for the wrong person at the wrong time. And while I regret the pain that's caused, I don't regret the bond itself." A reporter in the front row raised her hand. "What do you say to people who claim you trapped Mr. Harlow with the bond?" "That they don't understand how bonding works," I replied. "You can't force a bond. It requires mutual compatibility, mutual want. Charlie bonded with me because on some fundamental level, we fit. Not because I manipulated him." Another reporter, "What about your relationship with Caroline Crawford? Family sources say you've always been jealous of her." Pain lanced through me at that, but I kept my voice level. "Caroline and I have a complicated history. But this situation isn't about jealousy or revenge. It's about 2 people finding an unexpected connection." The questions continued, Some genuine, many hostile. Charlie stood slightly behind me, a solid presence I could feel through the bond. When one reporter asked particularly invasive questions about omega biology and bonding, Charlie stepped forward. That's enough. Adam has been more than gracious in addressing your concerns. This conference is over. As we left the stage, the shouting intensified, but we didn't look back. Across town, in her penthouse apartment, Caroline watched the broadcast on her tablet. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into the expensive leather couch as she watched Charlie defend Adam. Watched him choose that worthless Omega over everything she'd offered. She dialed a number, hands shaking with rage. He publicly humiliated me, chose him over me in front of the entire world. The voice on the other end was calm, calculated. Then we moved to the next phase. If public opinion won't destroy them, we'll use something more direct. What did you have in mind? Leave that to me. By the time I'm done, Adam will wish he'd never heard the name Charlie Harlow. Back at the hotel, Charlie and I were escorted to a private room away from the press. The moment the door closed, I sagged against it, adrenaline draining away and leaving exhaustion in its wake. That was the hardest thing I've ever done, I admitted. You were incredible. Charlie pulled me into his arms. Brave and honest and perfect. I almost ran halfway through, but you didn't. You stood there and told the truth, and that matters. My phone buzzed, my lawyer informing me that several outlets were already running stories more sympathetic to our side. The narrative was shifting, slowly but surely. Do you think this will actually work? I asked. Or did we just paint an even bigger target on our backs? Honestly, I don't know. He rested his forehead against mine. But I know I'm done hiding. Done letting people dictate what this bond should or shouldn't be. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear. Hope, fragile but real, bloomed in my chest. Whatever happens next, we face it together, I said. Together, he agreed. Always. The bond between us pulsed with certainty, solid and unbreakable despite everything we'd been through. Caroline could plan, could scheme, could try to tear us apart. But standing there with Charlie's arms around me, I finally believed we might actually survive this. Not unscathed, we'd both carry scars from this battle, but together and stronger for it.